You are listening to Talking Home Renovations with the House Maven. Is it time to renovate your house, but you're worried that you don't really know what you're doing? This is an educational and entertaining podcast that will ease your fears. Or maybe you just love hearing about home renovations like I do. I am your host, Catherine McPhail. I am an architect. I practice in Eastern Massachusetts. On the show, I interview other architects, vendors, contractors, and homeowners to gather tips and stories about home renovations. You can learn about materials, systems, sustainable practices, what to expect, what to avoid, and how to make the most of the money that you'll spend on your renovation. Architect Dory Azar joins me in this episode to talk about working with an architect. Dory is a Canadian architect. He's celebrating 10 years of running his own firm. Here's my conversation with Dory. Dory, I know you're a really busy guy, so thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
So you're an architect.
Yes.
You're Canadian.
Yes.
I think you're my first international guest.
Oh, no pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we going to talk about today?
Renovations
All
and
right.
additions, right? I guess we can roll those into the same.
Yeah, I think of renovations and additions to be one. Like if you're renovating your house, you might be changing it a lot, adding a second floor or an addition or
Yeah, I don't think
gutting
I've
the
ever.
whole thing.
I don't think I've ever done an addition that didn't touch any other part of the house. You
Oh,
know,
yeah, you
where it's
can't.
just a clean, brand new space. You know, not touching, not redoing the flooring throughout or trim or whatever. There's usually
Yeah.
a renovation associated with it.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how that could be possible. Like how you could just add this bit, be like a caboose attaching to a tray.
Let me think about that. I don't know. That's a good. Yeah, it would be an interesting. I mean, short of like a a screened room or a back porch or something like that. But no, I think
No.
yeah, you're gonna make me think about that one.
If anybody's planning to do that in the first place, they always add stuff on as the process goes on. So it's not.
Scope creep
I don't
is
know if
real.
it's even possible.
Yeah.
It's very real. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you yourself, you mostly do new houses, or how much of your work would you say is like additions and renovations?
Since COVID started, probably 60%.
Oh, okay.
It's probably a little more than half. Yeah, and we found that with COVID just once. And I don't know where you're living right now, but in our area, land costs have gone absolutely crazy. Material costs, as we all know, have gone absolutely crazy. So people weren't traveling and people weren't going anywhere. So we found a lot of people coming to us to help improve their existing property, whether it was a small addition or a massive overhaul and everything in between. But people really started to invest in their own properties.
They really did. It made me wonder how much they spend on their vacations. Because people would always say, well, we're not going anywhere this year, so we're going to, put a pool in.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Wow.
All right.
So you take $60,000 vacations every year. That's
I
very
guess.
cool.
Yeah, that's cool for them.
Yeah. So that was, if I'd say 50, 60 is renovation, probably 40 is new construction, 45. And then there's a little bit of commercial work that we do in there for some repeat clients.
When you think about a renovation, what would you want a homeowner who has never done anything like this? What would you like them to know?
Geez, the first thing that they should know is that they have to have somebody that they can work with on their side, right? Of course, I'm going to be here advocating for architects, but I think there's nobody better suited to control that trajectory of that project than the right architect. I know in our area, at least, we're a very contractor-driven area. So the thought often here is when somebody wants a project built or an addition built, they go to a builder, right? There's a logical connection there. I need something built. I'll go to a builder, and they can help me facilitate the project. But I think that's not a bad phone call. You're going to need a builder at some point. I think the right first phone call is to interview your architect or architects to see who's that person you're going to connect with, who's going to be there shoulder to shoulder with you to help you vet through some of those murkier parts of the renovation.
Right. Yes. Yeah, because I always say that there are lots of decisions to be made, and if you don't make them, then the contractor, the builder, is going to make them. Mm-hmm. And he might assume that, of course, I always use the example of trim or like baseboard. Like you think, a homeowner might think it's going to be this way. and then the builder's just making a different assumption.
Yeah.
So it's not the same.
Yeah, because um, builders are builders. They'll do whatever you ask them to do. But you're right. If you don't ask them, if you're not clear on something, uh, the opportunity for assumption is just enough to derail the project. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little too much. So yeah, it's always a good idea to start with your architect, because what the architect's gonna do, and I forget where I heard this for, but they compared the architect to the general practitioner, your medical general practitioner. It's like they're not the specialist in the category, but they are going to see the big picture of it. Or they are architects are the specialists in this case, but they are going to see the big picture, right? So they're not making decisions in isolation. They're not saying that siding, oh yeah, that's the siding that we have to use, without backing up and saying how does it tie together with everything else. So I think that's why architects are important and valuable, is that they're looking at the whole project and not just one element. You know, if you consulted your countertop company on countertops, they're going to sell you the highest end countertop that they have, because they think that that's the best thing for the project, or flooring, or whatever. If you talk to those people in isolation, you might end up with very high quality things across the board, but that don't work well together. So having that design professional on your side that can say, yeah, this is no, you don't have to spend that much on that thing. You can hit this price point because it works great with that price point, and now we have a couple extra bucks to save, or to apply to something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when someone, well, if they don't know to call an architect, or in some cases an interior designer or some other design professional,
Mm-hmm.
how would they even know to call to begin with? I guess because they listen to this podcast, right?
I don't know anybody who doesn't listen to this podcast. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
true. It
source,
is very popular.
the source of all things.
Right.
And that's, I think, one of the things that architects have to keep doing better. Um, Social media has been really nice for helping spread the word, not only from architects projecting what they do, but also, I often get tagged in a Facebook post or an Instagram post where somebody's saying, hey, I'm looking to put an addition on my house. Who should I call? I'm looking to do, and then people who do know you and do know you do that kind of thing, are quick to throw your name out there. And then that's our opportunity to prove our value and our knowledge, and, really, really make the homeowners feel comfortable.
Right. As someone who's never done this before, what should they expect?
So maybe let me talk about my process. If somebody called me today and said, hey, I want to put an addition on my house and renovate the rest of it. So the way our office works is we always try to get a big picture understanding of what the point of the addition is. Sometimes people say they want to add, let's say 3 bedrooms to their home, or 2 bedrooms, whatever. But it turns out that maybe just a reconfiguration of what they currently have might need them only add 1 bedroom, or something like that. So we generally we'll meet, we'll take inventory of what they have and what they need, and what we can do. Sometimes people say, yeah, I want to build, 20 feet out the side of my house. I said, well, you only have 10 feet there, so you can't, we're kind of landlocked, and sort of helping with that. Once they become clients, I should say, the negotiations aside, once they've signed a contract and they're working with us.
Right.
So there is the conversation of understanding what they want, what the purpose of the renovation is. So is it just to freshen things up? Do you need more space? Do you want more space? In 10 years, will that space be used the same? Is it a young family? Is it a retired couple? Because those are sort of clues as to how well the renovation is going to age. So we try to understand them and their lifestyle as much as possible, so that we can sort of put all that in a blender and make it work. And then an open mind always helps too, Catherine. So anytime a homeowner comes to us, I really appreciate when they're kind of I'm going to say kind of loose about the process. That they understand that it's not a renovation is a renovation. There's things behind the walls and in attics and below grade that we don't have X-ray vision, right? We just can't see ahead of time. So based on the age of the home, you make some assumptions, selectively demolish what you can to investigate certain things. But just knowing that, all the things that we've prepared, you might have to, just meander around a plumbing stack if it's in an unfortunate spot that's too hard to relocate or things like that. So an open mind is really an important thing to bring to the table for a client, just so that, when you do hit a speed bump or a hiccup along the way, which I'm sure in your experience, they happen in
Oh yeah,
renovations.
they happen. Yep. Yep. No, they do.
Especially even once construction starts and building inspectors are on site and interpretations, and right, it's nothing's the end of the world, right? Everything will get worked through.
Yes.
But there are snags along the way. And and then just working with the architect on sort of being clear about what you want and the open-mindedness of what it could be.
Yeah, that is true. Managing expectations in all of life, of course, but also in renovations, it's going to be just. I have seen people be so disappointed, which I think it comes out as, anger. It doesn't have, so if you have really rigid expectations that may also be unrealistic, it's not going to be comfortable.
I love those rigid expectations. That's a great word combination there, because it's yeah. And I've worked with people who are very firm and it has to be this and it has to be that. In the second something's, you have to move that door opening over 4 inches. It's the end of the world, right? And it's then the next time that window had to be lowered an inch because of, whatever, then that multiplies the disappointment. And it's like, really, when we look back in 5 years, those aren't going to be the end of the world things that happen to your project.
Right.
But if you're expecting everything to go absolutely perfect, I mean, everybody's trying to.
Right.
And sometimes they do, right? Sometimes you hit a home run and it goes great. But, I'm involved in a couple right now that are just, I mean, you're taking like the baby steps through the process, because you just don't know what that next thing is going to, floodplains and poor soils and, rotted structure. And, you have to come to the table with an open mind. Those clients are.
Yeah.
But if you come in with, it's got to be this and it has to be exactly like that, I think disappointment's going to be a lot easier to find.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, no matter whether you hire an architect or you hire just a contractor, you're still going to have the rot. And like you said earlier, the bees in the wall, but I think we help them through difficult processes. Like there was one project where there were a bunch of things that were not turning out the way I had expected them to. So also I need to have kind of flexibility as well, because if I draw it a certain way and then they don't build it that way, and then I have to decide whether it's worth forcing them to rebuild it, which I could, I guess, or whether I just need to make it work. So
yeah, so let's talk about the architect having to be flexible too.
Yep, what we do.
So it's not just the client that has to come to the table a little bit flexible. So even the architects as well, like on any given renovation project, a lot of times they have an idea of what they want, but sometimes don't know the potential of what they've got. So while they might say, I need A, B, and C, you might start working on it and realize that there's a D or an E that they hadn't thought about. And it's on you to pitch that back to them. And if it's a really clever solution or a good idea, they might need some time to think about some things.
Yeah.
So you can't always steamroll your clients. Everybody's got a schedule, right? It should take about schedule. Well, let's talk about schedules too, and managing timelines. But homeowners oftentimes they're spending, let's say, hundreds of thousands, on this. You can't expect them to make a decision in an hour, in a day, in a weekend. Sometimes they need time to, and especially if it's a renovation. This has happened to me a couple of times where, they'll meet at my office and we'll go through the design with them, and then they'll take those drawings home and walk their house with them. And now they're looking at the drawings and looking at that wall, and they come up with a few options, and then they want to sleep on it, and so they do, and and I don't blame them. You can't force people to make a big decision in an unreasonably short amount of time.
Right.
So in my experience, but at the same time, you can't give them 2 months to make a decision, because that's just gonna derail the whole schedule of your office and their project. So yeah, it wouldn't be unfair for a homeowner to expect a patient architect as well.
Yeah, and a flexible one during construction, because I find a lot of contractors might not be that fond of architects, and this could be because they've had experiences in the past where architects are pretty inflexible about things
Right.
that they have. To me, it's the things, big things go awry during the framing, in my
Hmm.
experience. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
find that framers sometimes think a little bit too much for themselves. I know that sounds kind of, maybe it sounds not very nice on my part, but like they think, well, we should build the wall over here because it makes more sense to line it up with the lower wall. For example, this happened to
Hmm.
me years ago on a project that we'd gotten permission to build this addition, because but we had to keep it in the setback, and the other one was not violent. It was like something like that where we got,
Yeah.
the ZBA said, the zoning board of appeals said we had to put the wall back a foot and a half or something.
Hmm.
So that's the way it was designed, but I arrived and the framers had framed it out to the edge because that made more sense. You'd have a bigger room, right? I mean, yeah,
Right.
that makes more sense. But
That makes more
yeah,
sense.
it does. Makes more sense. But I said, I'm sorry, you have to. I mean, in that case, I had no choice, but because the
Yeah.
town had given the permission to build it in a certain way.
Hmm.
Other times I show up and it was supposed to be 7 feet to the top of plate for like an
Hmm.
addition off the back. And then they just built it
Hmm.
at 8 feet because it's better at 8. It's better to have
That's the
bigger
way I can buy
ceilings.
them. Yeah.
And also I don't have
No.
to cut it. Like, so I was too late. It was all framed, but it impacted the
Yeah.
master bedroom above. And,
Hmm.
and then I had to have different windows because
Hmm.
it was like, there are ramifications to just, but I had to go with that one and make it work.
Yeah. And let's. I love contractors.
I do too.
Okay.
I do too. I
I'm
work for a lot of
my
them.
my dad was one. My brother is one. I come from them. I'm cut from that cloth. Um, and sometimes things that have kind of come around and backfired on me in the past is like, you're right, Catherine. We can't put a lawn chair in the front lawn and be there 24/7 while construction's happening, right?
Right.
So people are going to make decisions without reaching out to you or interpret things. Um, Sometimes a dangerous path of communication, if you've been hired by the client, is when the contractor gets directly to the client about, hey, the drawing shows this, but I think it would make more sense if we did this. We do it all the time.
Yep.
And the homeowner says, well, okay, that makes,
Yeah.
and we need an answer now. Otherwise, we have to leave for the day and we can't come back for 3 days.
Right.
The homeowner's going to say, okay, sure. Well, if you've done it before, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then Catherine shows up and says, that wall's a foot and a half off and the ZBA won't allow it. And then there's problems,
Yeah.
right? So I find, the path of communication
Yeah.
is so critical sometimes because, you don't know when, that room is 10 feet wide because they have a piece that's going to fit on that wall. Don't make it 9 feet wide because you don't know their furniture. You don't know their art situation. You don't know
Right.
what that wall is being used for.
Right.
So trust us. And I have the chat with contractors all the time. It's just believe all the decisions have been made already.
Yes.
It's one less thing that you have to worry about. Just build it as we've drawn it. And if you run into a problem, don't build it until we've had a quick conversation.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, it is all about the communications and working as a team together with the contractor.
Yeah.
So yeah, because they're doing a lot of. I mean, they're involved in this. Their project as well as my project. I just want it. I'm kind of an advocate for the owners to get what they want, which we've already discussed
Mhm.
probably
Yeah,
over and over again.
it's their project,
Right.
right?
Right.
We're just here to handhold it to
Yeah.
fruition.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I remember love this story one time. It was a commercial project we were working on, but there was something that the contractor didn't like about the way we had the window inset into the wall, and it didn't give him enough surface to caulk around the window the way he wanted to. So he calls me out there, and he jumped like unreasonably upset over a detail that is doable. He just didn't want to do it like that. And then he says, "Oh," and then I looked at him and said, "Wait, what would you do?" And he just he looked at me and he's like, "What? Like, well, what would you do?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I would just do this, and that." Like nobody had ever asked him before
Mm.
his opinion. He was always just yelled at his whole life.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, what would you do?" And he's like, "Well, I would just do it like this." And I said, "Okay, next time I'll do it like that." And it just diffused him completely. It's again, maybe there's a theme here of communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, from all parties, because it's, let's be honest, you can't rush a renovation either.
Right.
Um,
No, you can't.
and, good communication takes time. Bad communication saves time, air quotes,
Mm-hmm.
saves time, but costs, I don't know, a lot of money and stress
And trust.
and trust.
Right.
Is trust a thing? Do
I
you have to trust your builder?
trust is a thing.
Did-
I think it. Yeah, I
the
mean, I
guy or
think
girl who's going to rip your house in half and take over for a few months. Patience. It's so hard to. It's so easy to talk about patience. It's so hard to exercise it.
yeah.
But really, if there's any homeowners listening to this right now that are thinking about a renovation, just deep breaths, right? It should all get done. Assuming you've selected the right team, and but it's going to take patience all the way through. Even right now, we're experiencing in our area huge delays in getting our building permits. Like, just so drawings are complete and in, contractors waiting to start, but there's that sweet spot in between where you're waiting for your permit, and something that should take 2 or 3 weeks is taking 2 or 3 months now. And that's the reality of where we're at right now. And so people are excited, people are anticipating weather, people are trying to plan moving out so that the contractor can come in and it's so hard to navigate that. And COVID's made it, I mean, it's becoming cliche now, but it's made it so much harder, because some of the lead times on, even once you start construction, right? Like, right now we're experiencing real window delays.
Oh yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so, and what could there be a more pivotal part of construction than the window, the thing that seals the interior from the exterior, and you can't brick or side until the windows are in, and you can't drywall until the windows are in. Like,
Right.
everything is relying on those windows. So it's like you get your permit and you have to like order your windows like immediately.
Right. But then if there's any change in the framing because you came across some kind of condition,
Exactly.
then you're like, just have to make it work. See, that's where the like, we're just going to order these windows like we planned. We're going to hope for the best.
Mhm.
And we may
Yep.
need to, yeah, because they are, for certain windows, I have been hearing 26 weeks. It's a half a year.
hmm
That's a long
Yeah.
time. It's a long time.
Yeah. And things do change. You're right. Like that framer that framed that wall a foot taller, you might need a window that's a foot taller.
Right? I mean, because if an 8-foot wall needs a different kind of window than a 7-foot wall, I think,
Mhm.
potentially.
Or somebody looks at it later and says, "The architect put a little teeny window in that
Mm,
wall." Why would they make a decision like that?
yep. Yep.
And that's a legacy of what we do, right? Is when the project's complete, everything is really easy to pin on the architect.
Yes.
Well, why is that wall there, and why is that? And, well, I don't know, the architect. You know,
Yep. Yep.
um, so, but I think the reward of it at the end is all worth all the trouble through it.
Right.
I don't know about you. There's nothing I find more fulfilling than just watching that idea you scribbled on a piece of paper one day
Mm,
over lunch, because you had this kind of thought about how two things could come together. Months later, there's a group of people putting it together.
right.
It's like, wow, this is really, really gratifying.
Yeah.
And the homeowners should feel the same way, I'd like to think.
Yeah. Oh, and then when you run into them later at the store or something, and they talk about how much they love their space, that makes it
hmm
all worth
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Or the referrals later say, hey, John Doe gave me your number. They said they love what you did at their house, and
Mm-hmm.
the feedback like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
where it's not direct to you, like you did a great job, but you get referrals and people name drop that client. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess they really did like it. I liked it, but I guess they did too.
Yep.
They just express it different.
Yep. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about for me anyway. But
Mhm.
so what else should anybody know if they're just starting out? You mentioned
What
patience.
else? Yeah, patience. You mentioned trust, which is
Mm.
patience and trust on a renovation. I don't know if there is anything else, besides a contingency budget.
Yeah.
just keep a few bucks off to the side just in case things.
Yeah. So do
You
you
know.
do you bring these things up when you're first starting a project with someone, the importance of trust? And should we bring it up, or should we just assume it's going to happen? Or
No, I think, again, in the spirit of communication, I'd rather have that conversation now and have them say, yeah, I know what you mean, than not bring it up and have it be a critical thing. So the principles are the same whether in architecture or life, right? I just like trust, And if somebody trusts, so let's talk about two clients, the client who trusts you and the client who doesn't, but for some reason they both hired you. The client who trusts you is going to, I think, have a much better and process and much more enjoyable process. The client who doesn't trust you is just looking for they're looking for typos in your emails. They're just looking for something to latch onto and to make bigger. So I think trust in your architect and trust in your contractor are huge. And that manifests in a million ways. Trust from, you're going to get back to me in a timely manner. You're going to design me a safe building. You're going to build me a safe building. You're going to tell me when something is or isn't happening. You're going to want to be true to the project. And if something is going to work, I'll tell you. And if something's not going to work, I'll tell you. And then it's on the home, because trust isn't always good news, right? So that does lead to some difficult conversations. But again, if everybody trusts everybody and everybody's comfortable with everybody, those conversations should be had.
Yeah. Sometimes there are clients who are worried that this isn't the way I wanted it and it doesn't seem finished. And I said, well, maybe it's not finished. I mean, it's possible it's not finished. They haven't said it is, and you're there in a non-meeting time. So it's we just need to wait until they're presenting it to you. And it may look disturbing in the meantime.
I've had that happen to me, not a lot, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4 times in my career, where you show up to the job site and you look at something and you're like, that's supposed to be a 10-foot ceiling in that room. That wall they framed is only 8 feet and nobody is here.
Yeah.
And so everybody wants to panic, right? And so you get a hold of the framer and he's like, you know what? Yeah, we built an 8-foot wall. We double checked it should be 10. We've just gone for lunch. Lumber will be here in an hour and we're going to fix that wall.
Right.
Like, oh, okay. So rather than just, flying off the handle and like, okay, maybe there's something I don't know here.
Yeah. Just maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. And I love saying, I love that, people don't know what they don't know, right? And if everybody felt that way, I think the world would be an easier place to get along with, because if the homeowner and the contractor felt that way, like maybe there's something about this that I don't know. Let's all get in the room and talk. Let's and not email. Email's great for what it is, but if there's a discrepancy, people typing like they're lawyers is like, whatever. So if there's a simple explanation, just get on the phone.
Yeah, it's really easy to misinterpret something that's written down like that. Like in a text. Texts are tough too because they're very short by their nature. So if you're thinking there's a certain emotion attached to it, then you might misinterpret the shortness of the text. That's actually leads to misunderstandings.
No, that's a thing that I most of my clients get a little conversation before we start working together of texting is for things like, I'm running 5 minutes late, I'll be there as soon as I can. Emailing is for things that, hey, I'm thinking about making a change, or here's my decision on that, or whatever, anything that we need to maybe put in a reference folder somewhere that we may have to call upon later. And phone calls are for something a little quicker, and a little more urgent that you need just a quick sort of opinion on. But don't text me. We're going to go with the 3-bedroom option and the like that. That's not a text, right?
Yeah.
And people do that all the time.
Do.
I got one yesterday that said there was the project, an addition and renovation that we're working on right now, where we're doing a crawl space. So it's just a 4-foot crawl space underneath the house. And she texted, not even me, Melissa in my office said, hey, could we make that 6 feet? And I'm like, wait, no, that's, and it was after hours too. So it's like an after hours text on somebody else's cell phone so now it's like, okay, you have to, and will this cost more money? Will the contractor charge me more? It's like, okay, don't send that in an email. That's a good group email question. It's affecting a lot of people. And, so Melissa now, who gets a text at 7 p.m. has to remember to show it to me in the morning. Hope she doesn't get 10 other texts, which bumps that text off off her screen.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So yeah, I do have preferred methods of communication depending on what they're trying to communicate.
It's good that you actually bring that up, and that's inspiring me to also bring that up. Maybe have a checklist of things to discuss at the beginning, because if someone texts me something like that, I know they've communicated with me. I'm searching my emails for the details. I can't find it. And then it turns out it's in a text that, you're right, has been buried for, under 100 other texts that I get.
once it's off that screen, right? It might as well be gone.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, that's I have this kind of way that I work, and I'd rather have the difficult conversation now. To me, it's the end game. It's the end result, right? So, how happy are we on the day you get your keys? So, if there's conflict or disagreements or difficult conversations or anything along the way, if they're all to make the project better, then let's have them now. What I don't want to do is tell you what you want to hear
Right.
for 6 months,
Yeah.
and then you get your keys and you're like, what? No, 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 no. This isn't, my bed doesn't fit,
Mm-hmm.
my, or whatever, all those, like, it still has to work.
Yeah.
You can't, it's not just about getting to the next step. They have to be the right decisions to get to the next step.
Right. Right.
And I know in additions and renovations, sometimes it's, oh yeah, you're just building an addition. You're just doing things. It's like, no, it's almost harder than designing a home from scratch, right? Like you've inherited a whole set of conditions that you have to respond to now.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes, we're in a flood prone area where we have to raise the addition higher. Let's say, the existing top of first floor and the new top of first floor have to be 2 feet. The new floor has to be 2 feet higher due to some new regulation that didn't exist when the existing house was built. So now you're dealing with stairs, a short flight of stairs in the house. And how does that affect the exterior? Well, that's more steps to get up to any exterior doors. And then does that involve landings? And does that, and you can't go ahead and, well, you can lift the existing house, but sometimes the question I get a lot in renovations is like, but do I have to do that? No, you don't have to. Okay, then I don't want to.
Right. It's kind of involved, depending if they have a basement and everything.
Right. And again, like every condition or every project couldn't be more different than the previous one, right? Even two of the same projects are still going to have different criteria and outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I worked on identical houses in one of those developments that had been all made in 1967.
Yep.
So two neighbors, identical houses, and totally different renovations because they had different priorities and budgets and everything. So yeah,
personalities. And,
yep, definitely that.
Yep.
So they, they're never the same. That's kind of one thing that I like about it, as opposed to building new, because building new is, I mean, it's a different thing, but it feels less contained to me. It feels more like just spilled out. There's just so many possibilities that I like the restrictions of the tighter the better in a way, because then I could be more creative with like, how can we make this work in a way that's gonna be the best. So
I love a compact, awkward challenge.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle,
design.
Right? So
yeah,
fitting it all together.
Yeah, I mean, even working on it, I'm really kind of a nerd for tight planning solutions, and where can we sneak a closet? How do we interlock these spaces? And I love those puzzles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do a lot of third floor additions because where I live here, people don't have room to go out all the time. So they might have some room, and people want to build in spaces. Sometimes you can't build in them, or it's within like a centimeter of being up to code. Like, okay,
you used metric there. Thank you.
Well, I just like to be, relate to my guests. But
Well, earlier I said ZBA and I didn't say ZBA, so I was trying to. I'm trying to.
That's sweet. We're both trying. We're both trying to be understood by the other. Yeah.
Full disclosure, though, our codes are in metric in the province of Ontario. Our region, like the southern point here, we're all metric, or I'm sorry, imperial.
Oh yeah.
So all of my documents are in imperial. And it makes for some really fun days of converting metric to, do you use Revit?
I don't. I use Chief Architect, which is.
Oh, okay. Still BIM.
Yeah.
I have a certain dimension style that I use that has the dual units, the imperial and metric. So if I'm, sizing joists or beams or spans or whatever, I'll run a bunch of dimensions and it gives me all the metric and imperial conversions in the same string. And then I'm got my codes on one side and my notes on the other. And but it's kind of fun.
Yeah, well, that keeps your brain alive, right? It's those complicated things.
Yeah.
Well, any last ideas for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd say if you're in the market or position to put an addition on your home or renovate your home or both, build the right team, have the right architect, have the right contractor, if you don't know the right contractor, rely on, your architect should be able to put you in front of some people that he knows you're going to click with, and just build the right team, because if I've always found, Catherine, that people just want to work with somebody that they like, that they click with, that they're not afraid to pick up the phone and make the phone call. They're not afraid to stop by their office for coffee and just chat about something that might be kind of, they need to be put at ease for something. It's really a team building thing. So make sure you've got the right architect, the right contractor lined up, and then patience and communication will carry it the rest of the way.
Okay. Very, very sound advice. And so how can people find you? I know that you're on TikTok. People
I am
might
on
want to
TikTok,
check you out
yes.
there.
Yeah. So I am on any social media platform that is relevant. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is where I've been having the most fun.
Yeah.
There's tons of content on there that's not on any of my other platforms, and that would all be under some variation of Dory Azar Architect. One's Dory.azar.architect. One's whatever. But in general, my website is doryazar.com. Just celebrated our 10-year anniversary this year.
Yeah.
So that's we're having some good times around here. And if anybody wants to follow along or get in touch, that's how.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and definitely go check out his TikTok. And those of you who are already on TikTok know it's all not just dancing children. Well, thanks, Dory. Thanks for taking the time. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Thanks for listening. I hope you subscribe to this podcast. If you don't, please head over to wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe. And if you have time to write a review, that would be so helpful. Please contact me for any reason at the House Maven at talkinghomerenovations.com. I love to hear from people. You could also join my Facebook group, which is Talking Home Renovations Together. And I'm on there with a bunch of people who have also been on the show, have been guests on the show, and other architects and homeowners and contractors. And so we can just talk about whatever issues people might have right there in the Facebook group. If you're on Clubhouse, come join me, 10 a.m. Eastern, Saturday mornings. There is so much information on my website, which is talkinghomerenovations.com. Head over there for transcripts, episode enhancements, other information. You want to be a guest? That's where you'll find that information in the application. This podcast is a member of Gable Media, which is the largest AEC network on the planet. Check out the other content on the network at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. This podcast is a production of my architecture firm, Demios Architects, where we believe architects are for everyone. Until next time, take care.